Welcome into the At the Yard podcast, episode 123. We are on the verge of the start of yet another high school baseball season. So we thought we'd come together and discuss a number of topics, amongst them storylines, teams to watch, players to watch, and just some general information about the upcoming season. Fellas, thanks for joining me again. This should be a good one.
Excited to be back. It's finally here. It seems like just yesterday we were sitting down, well, at least Les and I and Matt were sitting at Lake Elsinore for the Southern Section Championships.
Yeah, I mean, it's my first high school season, so I'm excited to just finally get going because I'm talking to all these coaches around here, and they feel like they've been waiting since like October.
Yeah, a lot of exciting baseball to come, a lot of competitive baseball to come, and a lot of things that are going to take shape to make it memorable, just like every other season down in sunny California.
Stay strong, man.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Another week.
Cut that out.
Another week.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's fantastic. Anyway, let's jump in, right? Let's get started with some storylines because there's a whole lot of them, and one of the storylines, Hank, I know you wanted to talk about was the new league rearrangements, realignments, new league winners, things like that. Seems like that's happening a lot throughout the state, and NorCal's being no different. We were just talking off air about Oakmont and the travel they're going to have now with their new league. So what's kind of the big feel around NorCal area with this new league realignment?
Yeah, so I remember when I was in high school, the teams now aren't even relatively close to what they are in their same league. But I know two leagues up here for the Delta League, which has like Franklin, Elk Grove, and then there's the Sierra Foothill League, who's also got rearranged. So it used to be to where a lot of the better teams were in the Delta too, but it looks like this year, I think what would you want to call it? The big dogs up here is going to be the SFL. They have your Whitney, Granite Bay, even Davis got thrown in there this year. Pretty much all the local, teams in the Roseville area and so forth. But I think with the new leagues up here, it's kind of anyone can win it, and especially that Sierra Foothill League. It's there's a lot of really good talent, and then the teams they added. They're not, it's a really good game. And then same with the Delta, they added just more of the local teams, kind of like in the Sac, Elk Grove area. So I think adding Elk Grove back in with Franklin, there's going to be some, some heads going there, which is good. I mean, it's better to get, the local guys back in that same league, minimize travel. But I definitely think it's going to be a kind of a whirlwind to see who wins it.
But so let's pivot over to San Diego, Matt. I know like the league stuff isn't necessarily the big story. The big story, I think, is, will San Diego have two high draft picks this year in Grayson Bowles and Angel Laya, two Pro Case West participants last year, and then obviously Bowles, a two-time future gamer. What do you got there?
Yeah, I mean, both have shown very well so far this spring and winter. So, I mean, Bowles is up to 95, looking good in the games that I've seen him play. And Laya as well, improved swing decisions, frame, did really well at area codes. So those are two guys to keep an eye on for definitely going into the draft. And then also a couple guys who could sneak in depending if they have a really good year or not. But yeah, those are those two big names that are, in those top 100 high school players.
Yeah, and Hardy, for us here in the Southern section, the big story is this whole playoff realignment, right? Nobody knows what division they're in. Used to be that, if you were in D3 and you won it, you moved up. And if whether you lost all your guys or not, you're still moving up, right?
Still moving up.
Yeah, and that was a big complaint for a lot of coaches because, obviously you get those special classes, senior laden classes, you make a run at a championship, and then the next year you're rebuilding, but you got to move up. And, I know the conversations I've had with some coaches, some of those guys have talked about it here on this podcast, but what are you hearing in terms of, from coaches, maybe even from players with regards to this new change in the playoff system?
I think the players might be bigger fans of it than the coaches because players, a lot of times, it's like, we all know who the superpower is down here in the southern section. And for a lot of those guys, it's like, all right, cool. Like, we could get in Division 1, we could face off with Corona, we could be the team that upsets Corona. Where for coaches, and I think, 15 years of doing this and knowing a lot of coaches, we are creatures of habit. We want to know what's going on. We don't want you throwing some all crazy surprise at us where we're thinking, all right, we're going to be in D4. We're going to be in D4. We're going to be in D4. We got a really good chance to win the D4. Boom, we're in D1.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Right.
So I think that's the bigger thing is it's the lack of uncertainty, the lack of knowledge of where are we going to be. And I think it just makes people uncomfortable, which, right or wrong, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. But that's kind of the consensus I've got is it's just not comfortable. We want to know where we're at. It was always nice last year. If you're a D3 team, you can go look and see, like, where are we at in D3? What are the chances we're making the playoffs? Are we going to be a host team? Are we going to be on the road? Like, oh, man, we're in 4th place in our league. Like, are we going to get an at-large berth? And that ability to know what that looked like made it a lot more comfortable for people. So I think it's going to be really exciting. I think you sent me something a couple weeks back where they actually pulled up last year's standings and then put everybody in the division that they would have been in based on those standings using this whole new formula. And the Division 2 champ and the Division 4 champ both would have been in Division 1.
Right.
So it's like there could have been a whole different scenario where those teams are dogpiling at the end of the season, and who knows what would happen if they would have wound up in D1.
Yeah, and I think they're actually eliminating the at-large too. So they're just taking like the top 32 teams in the rankings, and if you're number 34, sorry, you're not in the postseason, which, as you mentioned, really sucks for those teams. I think another storyline, it's the central section, the Fresno Easter Classic. It's a great tournament run by Fresno High School. Jason Poppy there does a phenomenal job with that. 55th year this year. I know, Hardy, you're planning on getting out there. I believe I'm going to join you for that because it's a growing tournament that really brings together the best teams in the Central Valley. You got 𝕼𝕚𝕚𝕕 from LA going up there this year. So that should be a really good and fun tournament.
I'm really excited for that one. That's one going back to my days coaching junior college where we'd always go play the Central Section or the NorCal Central Valley teams, and you'd see the kids from the programs in that area. Like, I go back to being a senior at Westmont, and it was one of the first years that Fresno Pacific had a program, and we're playing at Clovis North. And then the next year, the Buchanan was their host until they got their stadium built. And it's like, man, these facilities are unbelievable. These teams and just everything, the resources up there. It's something that's been on kind of my baseball bucket list here in the state of California for a long time. So I'm really excited to get up there and see that. And, I think the Central Section sometimes in that Central Valley maybe gets a little bit overlooked because it's kind of tucked in its own little pocket of the state. And I'm really excited to get up there and give some coverage to those guys because there's so much good baseball up in that area.
Tons of talent, and the facilities are top notch. And
I
guess Jason Poppy does just a great job with that tournament. So excited for that. But Hank, back to you. Let's talk about some teams to watch. I know you've got a few teams listed here. Franklin High School, a team you're very familiar with, obviously. Let's start with those guys. What do you got on them? What are you excited about seeing from them this year?
Franklin, I think they're going to come out, at least I think they might win the league, honestly, just from what they bring back. And they did lose a good amount of guys just on, the pitching side, like Jordy Lopez, who's at Cal, Nick Abraham, who's at Tennessee. So 2 arms did, go away, but I think they bring back Dylan Wood, who's, you guys know about D Wood. Saw him last week. He's up to 94, 3-pitch guy. They had another senior named Kyle Pott, who is going to Santa Barbara, another 6'6" guy who throws pretty hard. And then, just with the hitting too, they got, I really like Dylan Minity and Jason Harris. Those are kind of their 26 superstars that they'll have. But I think just also with the realignment of the league too, it's some of those better teams that were in there aren't in there. So I think that just gives them kind of a, not necessarily saying they're going to be easy games, but, it's not as a tough schedule as that, Sierra Foothill League or the Western Catholic League. So I think they've got a real good shot, honestly.
Yeah. Another team that's got a really good shot, I think, to break through into the CIF San Diego section, Matt, is St. Augustine. We obviously have them ranked in the top 10, loaded roster. We mentioned Grayson Bowles, but it's more than just a one-man show.
Oh yeah, 100%. They have Johnny Haskell, who came with us to the Futures games last year, and a good bullpen of stable arms that I've seen. Good movement, good velocities as well that are performing well so far in the winter and looking good. Lineup, they lost maybe 3 bats, but those are being replaced by some underclassmen who are coming up as well. So they got a nice 1-2 punch with Haskett and Bowles, and then that lineup with Tyler Wick, Shane Miranda, to name a few. So impressive team. They had some interesting playoff moments last year that, unfortunately didn't go their way, but also had a couple of big ones as well. It's a tough go in the open division down here. So, but right now, yeah, I think they're a favorite to go far in the playoffs and have the roster to do so.
And Matt and Hardy, the team that you feel like, you seem to be on these guys more than anybody, and that's Royal. They are loaded with talent up in that area. What do you got, man? Because you've been singing their praises for a while, and it doesn't sound like anybody else has really caught on outside of these 4, faces that you're looking at right now.
It surprises me. Like last year, I saw them and I thought they were pretty good, and I kept kind of going. And I think they're a year away because they were in the same league as 𝕼𝕤𝕣, and they have 𝕼𝕤𝕣 with Bateman and Wright and Godin and these guys that are going D1, and they go on and win a Division 4 CIF championship. And I'm like, you know what? I could see Royal being that team next year. And I kind of called it on 𝕼𝕤𝕣 early. Like, I think these guys got a chance to win a title. And Royal just kept striking me as that next team that's going to surprise people in this area. I mean, you talk about they play in a 2-game-a-week league, and they currently have 4 Division 1 pitchers on their staff. They've got 2 more guys that have legitimate chances to pitch at the Division 1 level. So in a 2-game-a-week league, no matter what, you're going to have 2 D1 arms coming out of the pen. They got a legit ace workhorse in Caden Schrammick, 6'7" righty. He's been up to 92, 93, touching 94 in the fall. And then the second spot's going to be even more curious because you've got Dustin Dunwoody, who went to Future Games with us, who's been up to 93 with an absolute wipeout breaking ball. They've got Dean Barkman, a lefty, who's up to 88, 89 with a hammer curveball that are going to battle for that spot. Plus, then you put behind them, they got Brady Hewitt, who is kind of one of my sleeper under the radar because he got hurt players, but he's super talented. I mean, guy's got an Oregon commit. He's been up to 94 with a wipeout slider. He's probably going to close games for him. And I still haven't even got to one of my favorite players for them, Isaiah Tillman, who's another mid-80s up to 88 with a hammer breaking ball and a really good change. They've got Zach Nagy leading the offense off. He's going to be going to University of San Francisco. Like, they've just got this talent all across the board. We haven't even talked about guys like Colton Rayner, who's going to play first, and he's another arm for them that's mid to upper 80s with a slider. So they just have all this talent. They're in a good league, but there's also kind of a bottom end of that league that's going to allow them to be able to pick up a lot of wins. They've got a good schedule that I like for them in the preseason. That's just going to put them in a really good spot. Between their pitching and that talent, they're a team that I think is going to quickly surprise some people.
Yeah, and I think a team that shouldn't come as a surprise, Hank, and St. Mary's out of Stockton. I mean, that's a perennial powerhouse, but you got them as a team to watch again this year. Talk a little bit about those guys.
Yeah, St. Mary's, we go way back with St. Mary's, even from when I was in high school. I actually lost them in my first section championship, but they're loaded. They kind of run that whole Stockton area. They're up through the valley. You got pitching. I 3 D1 guys off the top of my head. You got Dax Hardcastle, who's going Mississippi State, Bavaro, and Groves, who are UCLA and Cal, I think, if I remember right. But I mean, those 3 arms you got right there, you're set. So, and I know they got a bunch of other guys who are on that roster who, were either dominated on JV or they even played, last year on varsity's team. But I caught a little bit of them last weekend when I was out watching Franklin and Davis, and they played Franklin in the morning, and I heard they look pretty good. Just as far as, they're old, they're relying on heavy seniors. So I think that'll play a big part of it too. And so, I mean, it is once you get past your conference, but they'll, once the playoff starts, I think they also got another shot. You'll see them with like Franklin run into like a semifinal game or something like that. But as far as like the league stuff, I think they should have that one.
Yeah. And then another team to watch for you down in San Diego, Matt, and a team you're not sleeping on, just for the record. Granite Hills, loaded with talent. We don't have them ranked in our Power 25, but guess what? There's only 25 teams that make that list, but this is a team that, is on the bubble for us for sure. And again, another team that is just loaded with talent.
Yeah, 100%. They have a lot of returning guys that we've seen a lot of. Lost a couple, but I mean, you have Trevor Smith, who just committed to Washington State, Tommy Entrican, and of course, Brendan Lewis, as well as, blanking on his name, but pitcher committed to UCSB. But they have a lot of guys and a couple guys who are going to start pitching this year who were, not doing that beforehand. So in the past, they played gritty, hard baseball, executing and fighting out tough games. Saw them come back from like a 3 or 4 run deficit in the 7th inning in the playoffs against Carlsbad last year. They play a good brand of baseball, good coaching, and all that. So they're a team to look out for sure.
And Hardy, let's go back to your area, a little closer to your home there, the Ventura Cougars, a team. Again, these are teams that not a lot of people talk about, but have a lot of talent that could surprise some people this year. And Ventura seems to fit that bill.
Oh, definitely close to my home. I mean, I can walk across the street and 5 seconds later I'm at their field. So it's very close to home for me. It's my alma mater. But it's a team that last year I kind of actually thought they were going to win the Channel League. They were sitting in first place, and then their 2 best arms got hurt. 2 of their better bats got hurt, and it was just a quick drop off from that to not making the playoffs. But now that chunk is back. And it's a very talented senior class. It starts off with Wyland Nelson, 2-way, who's been up to 92 on the mound, impact left-handed bat. He's the University of San Diego commit. He should get the ball on day 1 for them. He went down very early in the season for them last year with a freak knee thing. Nothing major, but losing that really affected them. Then after that, you've got a kid, Caleb Seebeck, who's on the rise. I know Hank saw him out in Hawaii at our event out there. He's up to 90 on the mound. It's an intriguing, like 6'4", 6'5", wiry frame, and he can really swing it. He played third for them last year. He's going to shift over to first base and give them this big, long, lanky target over there. Then we get to probably the guy who may have the most talent of anybody on that team, and Josh Woodworth. The kid's just kind of a freak athlete, physical. He was Team USA 15U national team. He can hit. He's got power. He's also a guy that's been up into the 91, 92 range on the bump. His arm is getting back. And he's got a wipeout slider. And they're another team that's in this like 2-game-a-week league with 4 really good arms on the mound. They also have a kid, Cooper Tinky, who's a very good pitchability, 6'3", 6'4" guy. He sinks it. He throws a really good changeup and a really good curveball. I mean, you've got 4 really good arms, and you're playing 2 games a week, and their 7 best players are seniors. it's a good group, and I really like what this crop could do in that league. Again, it's going to be a tough channel. We'll talk about it here later on, but that's a group that I'm really excited for, especially when you go back to all of these kids won a league championship when they started on varsity as freshmen. So they've done it once, and now they're trying to do it again before they leave.
Yeah, so we've covered your alma mater, we've covered Hank's alma mater. Unfortunately, we won't get to mine or Matt's because they're not on this list. But let's go to the theme here seems to be guys like, for lack of better terms, power arms, right? I mean, all these teams seem to have really good arms, and a team back up in NorCal, Hank, that generally always has good arms and just talent up and down the roster is De La Salle, and 2025 should be no different for the Spartans this year because they're coming in with a little chip on their shoulder after losing last year in the NCS title game and then in the regional to Granada. So those should be some phenomenal games when those two teams play. But take us through what you know about De La Salle.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some talking going on when Granada plays De La Salle. They're in the same league, so I mean, for them to see each other in league and then go to the playoffs, and it's like they're always going to be button heads. But I think De La Salle is not going to be as senior heavy, upperclassmen heavy as they usually are. I mean, obviously they have 𝕼𝕒𝕕𝕕, who you guys know, who's pretty stud outfielder, and basketball player.
Yeah.
Two-waying at Oklahoma. That's where he signed to go. I know they got a freshman third baseman that's really good, Jacob Gray. He's one of those kids where he doesn't really look like a freshman. He doesn't play like one either. I really like their infield, though. You got Gray at third, and then you got Castro and Spangler up the middle, kind of switching off. And, Spangler's a stud. And Castro, he kind of, with that team last year, he didn't get to play as much. But I think this year he's going to open up a lot of eyes. And then on the mound, too, I think they have enough pit. They got Schlitt on the mound, who's going to Stanford. They got, I think all around they have the talent to do it. It's just going to be a matter of, how are we going to piece everything together? Because, do you want to throw everything you got at Granada and, in the league, and then because you're going to see them in playoffs. So It's like, I don't know. I think they're going to go at it regardless, but I think De La Salle's definitely got some, they have a transfer, I think, too, Brandon Clayman, who was he was committed to SC, I believe. Yeah. So there again, another arm they're going to add. So, it's just kind of a matter of time. I think it's going to be really exciting when the postseason actually starts. And then obviously once those 3 games, or they play each other in league, but every time we go out to the Bay, I know it's going to be an exciting series between any of those teams.
Yeah, and let's head back to San Diego, Matt, and Cathedral Catholic got a bevy of transfers the last few years, this year being no different. Obviously we know about the Harrington brothers that have been there, but they added some pieces this year in hopes to be able to kind of finish the job that they just missed out on last year.
Yeah, and so they were kind of gutted in this past year by graduations, losing pretty much their entire infield besides Harrington and then a couple spots in the outfield. So they have plenty of talent that played on JV last year, as well as a couple transfers. So right now it seems like the pitching might be a little bit lacking, for lack of a better word, but that only for the time of the sit out, because you have Shohei Darvish and Jose Partida entering in. So yeah, it's going to be how can they compete 2 or 3 games a week while they are waiting for their transfers to come in and step in. But lineup should still be solid. From what I've seen, they got plenty of hitters.
Speaking of a team that has plenty of hitters and pitching and everything else, Artie, Sierra Canyon, you've been singing their praises for a while now. Obviously we know about Pero, but they've got more than just him on the mound. They've got a very exciting freshman, and this is a group that is, very sophomore, junior heavy. So the next 2 to 3 years could be Sierra Canyon making a whole lot of noise in the Mission League.
Very much so. I think, first two teams I talked about, Royal Ventura, very senior heavy, very much dominated by the upper class at that program. Then you go to Sierra Canyon, and it's a really loaded 27, 26, 28. But don't forget about the 25 class. I mean, you've got Andrew Nelson stirring the pot at the top. He's a left-handed hitter who can really run, plays the small game. He fits perfect in a Tom Musborn offense. He's going to grind at bats. You've got Ethan Montez, who's going to play third, probably going to close games for them. I was talking to one of their pitchers, who I know pretty well, when I was out to see them back in January, and I just looked at him. I was like, "Hey, man, like, Montez, is he going to throw?" He's like, "Yeah, he's going to close games." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "He may have my favorite slider of anybody in this area. It's this big sweeping wipeout pitch, and he tunnels it with this cutter, and you don't know, is it going to break 4 inches or is it going to break 12 inches?" And they both come out, and it's just a really devastating look. But then you just go up and down the lineup. They've got guys like Grayson Goulash, who for me is trending in a really good direction. He just continues to hit, but he's also playing even better defense at second. He's running better. I think he's going to really open some eyes. Cal Poly commit. I love their shortstop, Cody Gallegos. Kid could flat out pick it. It's legit impact high school shortstop defense, and I think it's got a chance to be that good at the next level. And he's starting to hit. Like, he's down in the 9-hole this lineup, and he's hammering balls and gaps. They've got Isaiah Torado, and I apologize, Isaiah, if I said your name incorrectly, but he hit 2 balls when I saw them back in January, where it was like, wow, like jaw-dropping off the bat. It wasn't a question of if it's going to go out. It was a question of, is it going to hit a house across the street, because they came off so well. The pitching staff is absolutely loaded. It does start with Sean Parro. We'll talk plenty about him. But then you go to a kid, Armando Solario. He is a 4-pitch mix, upper 80s, really knows how to pitch, great confidence. You got Matt Kennedy, and I'm not calling him Sasquatch, but I am calling him Sasquatch Jr. There's a lot of Boston Bateman in there. It's not the same stuff, but it's a lot of the same profile. He's going to be fun, and he's only at 27. He's 6'7". I asked his mom when I was filming. I'm standing next to her. I was like, all right, 6'6", 6'7", or 6'8". She's like, 6'7". He likes to say 6'8", but 6'7". I mean, it's just, I could go on and on. We'll talk about one of their really talented upcoming freshmen later on, but you said it right. If this isn't their year, it's not going to be the last year. We're going to hear about Sierra for the next couple of years ahead, because they are so deep.
Yeah, and speaking of deep, Hank, we'll go back up to the WCAL League, the Trinity League of NorCal, as I like to call it, with Valley Christian, who we've got ranked pretty highly for us in the state. I mean, loaded with arms, loaded with bat talent. I mean, this could be that magical year for Valley Christian. I mean, at least it's set up that way for them.
Yeah, no, you're right. On paper, I was one of the guys to be like, look, this team, they should do it, you know, but, it's baseball. Anything can happen. And the fact that their first 3 starting arms are Santa Barbara, Stanford, and USC, or
That's something.
It's all right, you know.
No Fullerton in there, though.
Kettleson, Lubach, Rohan, you know, and then they even got dudes out of the pen that are committed places, you know. So it's like, once again, common denominator is the arms. But what I really like about Valley Christian is the bats they got, you know, because Jordan Ortiz is a stud behind the dish.
Love that guy. Love that guy.
I think he's legit. Kettleson, both sides of the plate. He's pitching and hitting. There's another 27 we've talked about, Colton Hadfield. He'll get some time. The list can go on and on for that Valley Christian team. But, I don't want to put them too high on a pedestal or anything, but I think, if they do everything they're supposed to, it should be a pretty smooth year for them. Obviously, they got some really good games coming up, but they definitely have, that, what do you guys call it? That Trinity League down there is,
It's the Mission League. It's the
they're
Mission
loaded
League.
this year, so they can compete. They go down there for a couple league games, but
yeah, funny story about Kettleson when we were out at the future games. We didn't really know much about him on the mound, and hops on the mound and he's like 85, 87, maybe up to 88, and just this wicked spin on everything. We're like, bro, like you might want to look into this, bro, because this could be your ticket, And
like I always signed up for an outfielder.
Yeah, as an outfielder, right? Yeah, we're just like, all right, and getting the guy to say anything was like pulling teeth sometimes. But great kid, really excited for him and his future. And Matt down in San Diego, a team we saw in the San Diego D1 or Open Final, Rancho Bernardo. A lot like Corona, a lot like Huntington Beach. That obviously Corona won it all. Huntington Beach into the semis. But this is a team that might be better this year, like those two teams.
Yeah, I mean they lost a couple guys, Theo Kim, Brady Dawkin, but I think their big thing is that they had 5 or 6 sophomore starters last year, which I think is invaluable experience, and they all had great contributions and are expected to be even better. So you have a strong core of juniors that are, you got younger Dawkin and Caden, who's committed to UCSD, and then you have Brady Strachan, you have Owen Glick, you got Nathan Benbenek, you got, blanking on the shortstop, but they got a great group of players, and then same thing, they play gritty baseball. You got the guys who can hit it in with the extra base hits, and then you got some deep pitching as well with Betrez and Nathan Ling as well there. So, I mean, they're set up with all the right ingredients to make another deep run.
Yeah, they were really impressive in that final. I mean, they came out on the short end there, but they was really, really impressive, particularly with those sophomores you listed there.
Yep.
And Hardy, let's go up the coast from you a little bit. St. Joe's new coach this year. They've got an arm that we all really like, and they've got more than just that arm. This could be a pretty special year for St. Joe's up the coast.
Absolutely. I mean, they've really invested in that program. I know they got basically a brand new playing surface there. They've got not an indoor facility, but they now have a covered turf area where they can throw pins, they can take ground balls. Like, they've just gotten resources there to help these kids keep getting better. And they were already pretty good. I mean, they were Division CIF Central Section D2 semifinals last year, and it took a heartbreaking loss for them not to reach, I think it's Chucksani Field up in Fresno, where they host the championships up there. They were so close. Sorry, I butcher things around here, but they were so close to getting there. And it was on the back of a freshman arm. I mean, Mason, and I'm going to butcher his name, Majewski. It's a clean left-handed operation. He was like 82, 84. He'd give you a 5 and 6 here and there. Really good change, really good curveball. He continues to trend up. I know the velocity has made a little bit of a jump. I love their third baseman, Connor Chainley. Can really hit, can really pick it. He's going to be a big piece of them. Their catcher was a junior last year. They've got a sophomore who played short for them. They got a second baseman who was a sophomore. They really lose about 2 main pieces off of that lineup. So it's a group that's coming back in a league that was dominated by Cabrillo and Lompoc for a couple of years. Now Cabrillo has lost their 2 big arms, and it looks like it's going to be St. Joe's turn to potentially win that league and make a run again in the playoffs if everything comes together for them.
Yeah, Majewski is really, really a talented arm from the left side from the left side. He really impressed me when we were able to get some video on him and see him. It was pretty darn good. But Hank, let's go head up a little bit north of you, up into Santa Rosa. Take a look at Cardinal Newman, perennial powerhouse. This should be another good year for them. They've got a deep roster, a deep lineup. and a couple of arms that are pretty intriguing as well.
Yeah. Cardinal Newman, I know last year that they did have another team that was senior heavy. But they do return two of their best arms back. And one of those is Josh Janicelli, who's I'd say is pretty good on the mound. Not bad. I only seen him throw once, but I was like, who is this kid? And then I found out and knew who he was. But, just with they bring back a decent amount of bats in that lineup, and they got to face, it's a pretty good league out there. They got Casa Grande, like Annalee, I think's in that league too. So it's one of those things where it's not set in stone, but they are in the Boris. So I think that'll be a pretty good test for them in the mid-season. But I'm really excited to see Janicelli throw at least one more time, just because, it's been a while, and, they predominantly are, one of the better teams in that area. So I am looking forward to a trip down to Cardinal Newman.
Yeah, Janicelli, obviously we've known about him for a while, and good to hear that he's back and fully healthy and good to go, and primed for a big spring. And I think when you talk about depth of rosters, Matt, when it comes to teams in San Diego, Patrick Henry is a team that for the last 3-4 years, 4-ish years, they have just kind of reloaded, and they've got some special players on that roster this year in hopes to make a run.
Yeah, 100%. They're returning a good chunk of their lineup. Lost Gardini and Giordano last year, but I mean, you got Caden Henson, who's transferring, who's going to sit out. You got Ian Brook, you have Rowan Brown, came with us to the future games, who can all step in at catcher. You got some really exciting guys who were on JV last year, who got tons of innings with Brady and James Gunn. Brady looks outstanding striking out. Both of them had great winter ball schedules, with Brady striking out over 2 guys per inning. And then Eli Brum as well in there. All 3 taking up that velocity and look good as pitchers, as well as Lucas Waite, Cody Capoletti, but Lucas Waite is the 27. Saw him up to 94 in January. It's, clean operations. He's in the outfield. Tyson Bobo, who looks really good on the mound as well. So, and hitting as well. So you got tons of guys who can hit, tons of guys who can pitch. The pitching might be the deepest in all of San Diego, just on how many options they have. So it's going to be a really intriguing spring for them, and going to have a lot of eyes on them the entire spring.
Yeah, and then Hardy will head over to the Central Valley there. I mean, we talked about the Fresno Easter Classic a little bit earlier, but Central Valley is no joke when it comes to baseball. Bakersfield Christian is another team that should make a run again this year, despite losing a big arm last year. But they returned plenty of guys this year that should position them to make a run.
Very much so. I mean, you can't discount losing a kid like Mason Brassfield. That was a legitimate draft potential arm. He's now at TCU. He was as good a left-hander there probably was in the state last year in that senior class. But this is going to be I'm trying to plan out my spring schedule right now, and I'm looking at a way to get out into Bakersfield and see Bakersfield Christian, because they've got some really good players, obviously highlighted by McCoy Sillis, the big 26 Ole Miss commit. I've seen him up to 94 on the mound. He was really good at a showcase event that I just saw about 2 weeks ago. He was 89, 91, touching 92. It's a stupid power bat. It's not hit. You're not talking to Luis Arias or Stephen Kwan. He hits the ball as hard and as far as anybody from the right-hand side when he connects. So it's a very exciting team. They play on kind of that small. I think they are a Central Section D2 or Central Section D3. I know they're not down in D4, but they're in that kind of mid-level. But with the talent that they have and an arm like Sillis, they've got a chance to make a run. And Hank, pronounce it for me again. Tuxani?
Which one?
Is it Tuxani? Chickansey Field. We could see Bakersfield Christian at Chickansey Field come the end of the season.
Hopefully
Yeah,
I'm
well,
saying that right.
yeah, exactly.
If I'm saying it right and you're telling me wrong, well, I'm gonna feel real bad.
Right. Yeah, well, let's stick on that Chickansey Field theme because Hank, the next team, I believe, played in that Chickansey Field final last year in Clovis West, and they lose some pieces, but they return an awful lot. And again, that central section is deep, it's talented, and Clovis West appears to be one of the handful of teams from that league that should make some noise deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, a lot of good teams in Fresno in general. Just I remember playing in the Easter Classic. It was always a 1-0, 2-1 game. Clovis West, though, they lose a decent amount of pitching. That was one of their strengths last year. But they do have bats and the defense coming back. I really like an infielder, Mateo Martinez, lefty bat. He's just one of those guys. He's not committed yet anywhere, but he's a gamer.
He is.
Does all the little things right, athletic. I like their catcher, Micah Raygoza. He's got a cannon.
Their coach loved him in their preview. He raved about the way that kid can catch.
Hose piece for sure. Like he's like a little he's like a cat back there, I want to call it. And then their ace, I think, is going to be Reese Van Allen, who I actually saw him in scout ball in the fall, and he's got a slider that's like in the 2,900 range. So it's a really good pitch. He's upper 80s with the fastball. He's going to Fresno Pacific.
Yeah.
He actually committed there. But I mean, even I would say they're in a good spot, but with that track league, it's like you got Clovis North, you got Clovis, Buchanan, all these other schools that are just that got athletes. So I don't really want to say they're in the driver's seat, but I think they have a good shot to contend with those schools this year.
Dare I say the Trinity League of the Central Valley?
Might as well.
I was going to say it, but you went for it instead.
Ooh, I don't know.
We might have one.
I
That
don't
might
know,
be a
boy.
debate. We'll see.
Matt, back down to San Diego. We talked about Laya. Obviously Eastlake High School is a powerhouse down there. New coach this year, Coach Gallegos, retiring after 31 years of coaching, 27 as the head coach. But just an impressive run by him. But he certainly does not leave the cupboard bare there at Eastlake.
Not at all. I mean, they lost a good amount of pieces, so I think the concern this year is probably going to be pitching, but I mean, they're retaining a lot of guys too. Noah Solano, who we saw at the West Coast games, Kalani Jarigi, who's committed to SDSU, Austin Stroberg's going to step in at catcher. You got Zoen Watson, who didn't play too much but looked good in his sample size last year. Hamza Hadahet, who I'm a big fan of in the infield and potentially in the outfield. Nick Romero just committed somewhere. And then, of course, you got Laya. So they got a lot of bats, a lot of arms that, are going to get tested, but that lineup is looking solid, and they're always playing very high competitive, high-octane baseball.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting to see how they respond to the new coaching. And I haven't heard anything officially yet, but we all believe it to be Ramon Orozco, who's been there for a number of years, former college coach. We just have not been able to confirm that quite yet. But Hank, I'm going to toss it over to you with some surprise teams out of NorCal. You listed a few here: Rockland, 𝕠𝕕𝕤, Benicia, and Oakmont. I mean, every year it seems like a team comes out of nowhere, a team that you're not talking about at the early part of the season that is in the semifinals, or beyond, right? I mean, I think we can say that about Moore Park last year down here, Hardy.
Yeah.
Not a lot of teams, or not a lot of people had them and on their bingo card. And next thing you know, they're in the finals there. So of these teams, Rockland, 𝕠𝕕𝕤, Benicia, Oakmont that you list here, Hank, tell us just kind of briefly a little bit about them and who you think might end up being as the biggest surprise team.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll start with Oakmont. I just think because they're in a smaller division, they don't really get enough praise as they should. I mean, they got a lot of D1 talent on that team. It's just they're in a smaller league, for whatever it is, the enrollment. I think they will probably win their D5 now, just because they went lower than before.
Which makes, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
It's weird, like, because they were D3 last year, and now they're D5. I mean, did they go like 0-28 last year? I mean,
no, they won the section last year.
Right. How do you win a section and then drop 2 divisions? That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I don't know. It's
doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you
can
either.
compete with the D1s. You know what I mean? So it's
right.
The fact that they got to play teams that are way lower than them, but it is what it is. Same with Benicia. I think this year they got a pretty good shot just because they got some pitching, they got defense. Their shortstop's going to San Jose State. He's a dual athlete guy. They had another outfielder who's, I think, signed to Santa Barbara. They got some young cats on that team. So just being in that area, it's hard to, make a name just because the Western Catholic League takes a lot of the praise, as well as the East Bay and the North Bay. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if you do hear about Benicia, later, halfway through the year. Brooklyn, I think up here is tough just because you got so many schools around like Whitney and all those guys. So I think for them, they might sneak in because they do have Joey Lorenzini, who's really good.
Yeah.
They got another guy, Daniel 𝕠𝕕𝕤𝕕. He's going to San Diego State. Cash Brendan's at short, going to U of A. So their first baseman, Dylan News, is Northridge. So they got a lot of talent. But I think the sleeper team in the whole area up here is going to be ℼ𝕕𝕕. They're experienced. They're old. They're big. They look like a football team. We got Mason Belding leading the nose guard. He's on the line.
Middle linebacker right there coming downhill.
But all jokes aside, their record last year does not reflect what they should do this year because they've got enough arms to do it. They're old. Like I said, they're old. That's going to definitely play a part. And they're all just really good dudes. I know a lot of the ℼ𝕕𝕕 kids, and they're not, stuck up or anything. Is baseball. Let's get in. Let's get after it. Let's try to win. So that's a group that I've known that's played together since they were 8. So they got something. I think this is the year they could do it. But out of those 4 teams that I mentioned, I think ℼ𝕕𝕕𝕗's got a shot to be the one where everyone's like, oh. Didn't see that one coming, but
no, I like that kind of party, Hank. That's good. So Matt, down in San Diego, some surprise teams, potential surprise teams, right? I mean, these teams obviously have a lot of talent, as we know, but they are, listed as kind of these potential sleeper teams to watch. Coronado, Point Loma, Del Norte, Poway, and Torrey Pines. I go back. I grew up in San Diego, and I go back and I see this, and it's like, dude, when I was coming up, Torrey Pines, Poway, Point Loma were all powerhouses, man. When I was in high school, and now we're talking about them as potential surprise teams. To take us through a little bit, kind of like Hank did there, a little bit about each, and then who do you think might be the biggest surprise of those teams that you listed?
Right. So, I mean, I would say contextually, Torrey Pines, they just won the Open Division last year, but they really got gutted by graduation. So they lost pretty much their shortstop, 2 or 3 of their pitchers, outfielders, et cetera. So, I mean, they have a young core of players that, and guys who have experience on varsity that we've liked in the past, one being 𝕠𝕕𝕤𝕕 and Aiden Stroot, which I really like. But, it's hard to lose that many pieces and maintain success. But, I mean, no one's saying that they can't. They have some guys that we know of on JV last year who are impressive. Poway, same thing. They made it to D1, the D1 final, I think, against San Marcos last year, which is another team look out for as well. And
The
I mean,
football playing outfielder. The football playing
yeah.
outfielder. They love that dude.
So yeah. So they have a lot of guys that are very impressive. And so far this winter, I mean, I've seen him play once. One of our other guys down here have seen him play as well. And they're competing with St. Augustine. They're competing with Patrick Henry. So, I mean, they have roster that, may not stack up to how it was in the past, but obviously is very competitive right now as well. For Point Loma, they have a couple uncommitted seniors that we really like, Brandon Keeling and Drew Frost. They lost Sanford last year. But Sanford to Oregon is a big hit, but they return, Matthew Garrison, who was utterly dominant, the left-handed pitcher. So, I mean, they have some pieces and, put together and keeping consistent, but they're in a tough league. Who else? Del Norte lost Addison Klepsch, but they have a couple guys, Cole Hoffman. Blanking on names. Too many people to think about. They have a couple guys, couple commits who, long experience, long track record on varsity. They got some young guys coming up that got to see some varsity baseball last year as well. So kicking over to Coronado, they have two really good arms in Taylor Worth and Mateo Villanueva. And so, I mean, it's pretty much up to the offense because it feels like those guys can give you 5 or 6 shutout innings any day of the week. So,
yeah. All right. So who do you think's got the chance to, at the end of the day, be the biggest surprise?
I would have to say, it was hard. I just.
You got 5 seconds, Matty. Come on.
Right, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go with Del Norte.
All right.
Yeah,
All right, Hardy. We didn't submit any teams for this, but I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to give you 3. You're going to give me 3, and then we're going to go from here. And as ridiculous as it sounds to list a Trinity League team as a potential sleeper team, I'm going to give you 2 of them, and Orange Lutheran and J-Sarah. And I'm going to give you Gar out of Cerritos there, because I think Gar with Morrison and Enrique on the bump give you 2 frontline guys. Their offense is good. Grijalva, the catcher, is about as good a defensive catcher as anybody in the section. Orange Lutheran, new coach, new system. They lost a lot of arms. Obviously, they bring back Morse, and Peterson on the bump. And, it's an embarrassment of riches, right? Josiah Hartshorn, Murrieta. It's just how deep will the talent on the bump be? If you talk to certain people that are familiar with the J-Sarah program, they'll tell you that it's a total rebuild year. I'm not buying that. Brett Kay does an amazing job. Watching those teams is like watching the old Titans, Hank. It's something I'm sure you would appreciate. They do a lot of different things. But they aren't devoid of talent either. It's just younger, unproven talent. And so those are my 3 that I think will surprise people coming into the spring. And Hardy, you're lucky because I just gave you about 90 seconds to think about it. So who are your 3? Who are your 3 teams? Potential surprise teams in the Southern section.
I'm going to follow you on that because it sounds weird to call any Mission League team a surprise team, but I'm going to throw Notre Dame at you. They had a bit of a down year. Yeah, they made the playoffs. Okay. A down year making the playoffs is still a pretty good year, but they really scuffled offensively last year. They really relied on a very good pitching staff. Well, you lose a second rounder, a comp round. I can't remember when Levi went, but it was very high in the draft that Levi went. Yeah, he was like top 50 picks, I think, or 52, somewhere in that range. Their staff, it might not be better, but it is just as good as it was last year. They go really deep on the mound to the point that I'm not even sure who's going to start for them because they have so many good arms. It's not like I can just sit there and go, okay, this guy, this guy, this guy. I mean, you got Jay Beckett Berg, you got Logan Berenson, you got Holden Newhouse. You've got Osvaldo Nunez, who's a name that not a lot of people know about. They've just got this Peter Jackson, UCSB commit. I was like, I know I'm forgetting somebody else in there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I left 2 or 3 other guys off this. So they're good. The difference is I think their offense is vastly better this year than last year. They still have Dom Cadiz there, who was the best hitter in the Michelin, the best hitter on their team. But he's the UCLA commit. It is stupid right-handed power. He could hit. I think 𝕼𝕚𝕕𝕕 has come a long way, and he's going to be a very big piece of that offense. I love the way that kid hits, and he's so good behind the plate that he's going to make that pitching staff look even better than it already is. They've got 227s that are going to probably play up the middle. It's just, I think they're going to surprise a lot of people in that, yes, they are a good team, but they're coming off a year that was a little uncharacteristic for them. So they're one. I'm going to go way out of my realm. I'm going to go out into the Inland Empire, and I'm going to go with Los Osos. Their head coach, Coach Kelly, does a fantastic job of making his players known to us. He is a Titan. There's a little shout out to Hank. But I got a chance to see them play 2 games over MLK weekend. I know you guys, Matt and Les, got to see several of their guys at events in early January. I know we all got to see a couple of their guys also at a event in Orange County. They're going to be a sneaky good team. Like, there's no superstar other than maybe Hunter Meyer, the center fielder, who's a Titans commit. This kid's a dynamic athlete. Like, he can run. He's got power. It's a little bit of an unorthodox swing, but the ball explodes off the bat. We all love Wyatt Moeller. Les, you've been singing the praises. I know, Matt, you really like Gavin Loebkeen. They've got arms. They've got Reagan Samples, who can hit a ball about as far as anybody from the left-hand side, plus really, really talented on the mound. His changeup is we were talking about a heat sheet a while ago, and I was saying, we need a California changeup sheet because he has a devastating changeup. The bottom just falls out of this thing. Northridge commit. I'm going to go out and see they do what's called a baseline league day at the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes Stadium. Coach Kelly sent me the date and the times, and I'm going to make a trip out to see this thing. I would not be surprised if we are talking about Los Osos getting into the playoffs and maybe making some noise. And then my third one is going back to my local area. I'm going to go with a team that I was really high on last year, kind of underperformed for the talent that I thought they had, but I've seen them this spring in Newberry Park. They've got 2 Division I arms fronting their rotation. They've got some good ones behind it. I really like their lineup. It's not as talent laden as it was last year, but it seems like they've got a little chip on their shoulder. They were kind of the team that everybody thought was going to challenge Westlake to win the Marmani League, and they kind of slid into the playoffs in Division III last year. I wouldn't say they came full force. And then they knocked off Summit, who was the number 1 or number 2 seed, and they got knocked out the next round. But I think they've got a little bit of a chip ready to go, and I think they're going to push in that Marmani League, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And if I got to pick one of the 3, I'm going to go with Los Osos. I think they're going to really surprise some people. I love what Coach Kelly's doing there and the intensity and passion that he has for that program. I'm going to give them my feel-good push that I think they're going to make some noise.
Stamping them. Love it. Attaboy. All right, let's talk about some players to watch. We're going to go by class, seniors, juniors, sophomores, and we'll even dabble into some freshmen. Matt, I'm going to start with you. 2025 guy we've known obviously for a long time, been a pretty well-known name in baseball circles. Brendan Lewis, 2-sport athlete down at Granite Hills, a team that once again you are not sleeping on. He is an Arizona State commit, was an all-league football player. I believe he was an all-state player in football as well. But this guy, a year ago finished playing, I don't know what, December 15th or something football. 2 weeks later, he's at our preseason All-State, runs like a mid 660, and then puts on a show offensively for us, carries that into this last spring. had a pretty good summer. He should have a breakout year, if you can say that about a kid committed to Arizona State.
Right. I mean, he was one of the best bats last year. Saw him hit like crazy, and I mean, completely dynamic athlete, running back in football. I mean, and plays some defense as well. So, I mean, he moves really well all over the field. Hops up on the mound, can get innings in. He had a big performance in the playoffs to keep them alive in the semifinals. I mean, yeah, can't sing the praises enough. I've seen him hit for some power into the gaps and then play pepper to drive in a guy in. So I mean, it's a full package of being able to hit, field, run, athleticism, gets up on the mound. So yeah, he's an exciting bat to watch, and I mean, yeah, not much else to say. He can do pretty much everything.
Yeah, he's an electric athlete. And Hank, for you, the senior, you wanted to chat about a 2-time prep baseball All-American for us. One of the nicest humans I think I've ever had an opportunity to interact with, and one of the best one of the best overall catchers I think that the state of California has produced in a long time. And Braden Jacksa, I mean, this is a guy that if he's playing in any of these leagues we've talked about, the Trinity, the Track, the Mission, the WCAL, I mean, this is a guy that is going to be considered as a, top half of the first round pick. He's playing in a small league for a small school there in Irvington, and still might have that result of being a first round pick.
The kid's a stud.
Yeah.
You're stamping that?
I mean, he's about a foot taller than I am. So every time I see him, I'm, on a stepping stool. But like Les said, he's one of the nicest kids, ever. I like to call him a little Swiss Army knife just because he's not, I think he could play outfield. He could play first. He could play third. And he could probably pitch, honestly, if you throw him out there. But I think what separates Braden from a lot of kids is, first of all, you can't really get that juice out of his bat. That's, it's God-given. And just his approach, a lot of guys, they have pop. They try to just pull the ball. Braden just stays middle, up, and pull side. So it's really just to see him mature as a player. And, obviously he plays in a small league, small school, but, it's kind of one of those things where it doesn't really matter for him. Kind of like Brock Sell, who plays at 𝕠𝕗 in Lodi area, but just one of those kids where I don't know if he's going to make it to college just because that ceiling is so high, not literally, but like actually. But no, he's one of my favorite kids to be around. So the family's awesome. Yeah. He's great. So
I'm glad
you're good.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about his approach, because at the All-American game, they went 4 rounds of 6, I believe it was. First round is just kind of going the other way. Second round, okay, like I'm going to wear out the middle. Third round, I'm going to show you that I got a little pull side juice. And then his fourth round was just, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, right? Like he just worked the ball around the field. And it's like, you're talking about a 6'5", 6'6" catcher. But dude, he's athletic back there, man, and he can move. I mean, he's quick out of the crouch for being as big as he is. Just again, a phenomenal human being too, and that I think is my favorite part about him. Hardy, we'll go over to your guy, Quentin Young. Guy obviously we've been tracking for seems like forever, 3 years now. Finally a senior there at Oaks Christian. I got a chance to see him against Servite during MLK weekend. He was down, I want to say 1-2 in 1 count, and just flick of the wrist, hits one out to the deepest part of the park in front of probably, 25, 30 pro scouts that were in to see him. And this is a guy with limitless potential, obviously big league bloodlines. What do you got on him?
I mean, there's as much tools as anybody in Southern California. I'm going back to Jack's. I had somebody say, he's got a hand cannon, and Quentin's got a hand cannon. The ball explodes out of his hand. He runs really well. He's also 6'5". He's physical, but he doesn't run like a 6'5" kid. He runs like a 5'11", 6-foot kid. It is stupid. I've said this before. Stupid right-handed power. He can hit a ball as far as anybody out there. He can hit a ground ball as hard as anybody out there. I had a hard time picking which senior I wanted to pick in this area because there's so many good ones. I went with Quentin just because I think it's going to be an interesting season for him because is he going to get pitched to enough to get to that talent? I've seen him now 3 different times, and when people challenge him, which I know he got over MLK, he got challenged and hit 5 home runs. He went out to Vegas. He got challenged and hit 2 home runs. But it seems like a lot of the teams in this area kind of avoid him. It's a lot of breaking balls in the dirt, fastballs off the plate, and it's like if he gets pitched to, he easily could be a California Player of the Year because he's got that kind of potential. I'm interested to see in fall throughout the spring how much people are willing to throw balls in the zone to Quentin for fear of it could land on the 101 freeway if you're at Oaks Christian.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, it's not like you can't not pitch to him and not be concerned about the guys behind him because that's a really talented lineup. So
exactly.
that will be a very interesting thing to see. Matt, back down to San Diego, a guy that we were familiar with going into the preseason All-State. Coming out, we really had a very good grasp on not only the type of player he is, but the type of person and kid that he is. Kid that we really enjoyed our time with, and that's shortstop Jaden Parker, the 2026 out of University City.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden really opened some eyes early January, and came out, ran the second fastest 60s, 6'3", 190, giant frame, fast, athletic, good power. I mean, hit an absolute massive shot. We talked about this in the last podcast. Massive shot to the pull side on an 0-2 fastball in the upper 80s. We've been out to see him a couple times so far this winter, and it's, more of the same, hitting the ball hard, good competitive at-bats, smooth in the field, legged out a triple in front of me, think more extra base hits in front of our guy Vinny down here as well. So, I mean, it's a full set of tools, and it's really impressive. Also, great kid. I mean, yeah, no complaints. Everything looks great with him.
Yeah, complete package, it looks like, for sure. He's a guy that I think with the bright future, currently uncommitted, but that should not last very long. Hank, we'll go back to you. Again, back up into NorCal, 26 out of St. Ignatius High School. Archer Horn is a guy that, we're familiar with from a ranking standpoint and have seen, a few times in person, certainly on video, but a guy that, you're pretty excited about into this season.
Yeah, I don't know whether he's either going to go to Stanford as a pitcher or a hitter, honestly. I think he's really good at both. When he's on the mound, I've seen him up to 92, 93. He's like a 6'2" frame. And then when he hits, he's a left-handed hitter. So it's like when I've seen him swing it, it's like he went base hit 6-hole, right center gap, and he could kind of run a little bit. And it was during scout ball, so the positions he was kind of playing all over the infield. But I think he will be St. Ignatius' starting shortstop primarily. And then obviously he'll be one of their better pitchers just because he's pretty dominant on the mound, just kind of takes that shortstop mentality. It's a give me the ball and go type guy, not a thinker at all. So I think that's going to play, as well as just that those teams out there, really good during those weeks. So it's not going to be any easy games for St. Ignatius. So I think, he's only a junior, which is the crazy part too. He's one of those guys where I think he could have a better senior year than this year. So whether he does keep hitting, or I think he should stay on the mound too. Archer Horn, I think, is another guy. He'll cause some noise up here.
It's not often you hear Stanford commits described as not a thinker, but I like that when it is approach to the mound. So,
you're right. It doesn't play out. I noticed that on the mound is he just keeps the ball and go.
There you go, man. I love that. Let's go.
He wasn't looking at the
iPad. Hardy, we'll go back down to the southern section again. Another prep baseball All-American, a guy that we've been really high on since he came to future games with us as a freshman. James Tronstein out of Harvard Westlake. And, you and I talked like ad nauseum last year about Tronny and just about how even his misses are hard hit balls. And this guy at the All-American game hit a ball in BP off the batter's eye at Marlins Park that was, I want to say it was like 103 off the bat, and it looked like he was barely swinging. It was that, I mean, it's that legit. I mean, the power, the compact frame. He's moving over to center field this year, and it should be another big year for him.
I mean, you don't get nicknamed Tronny Barrels for no reason. And Tronny Barrels, and that's what he does. I think last year I lost count of how many times we talked about him on our high school recap podcast, event podcast, whatever podcast it was. I like the point of he's not the biggest guy. It's 5'10", 170, compact, but he hits a ball as hard as anybody out there. I'm excited this year because it's kind of his turn to be in the spotlight. Like, for as much as we praise what he can do, he's kind of been second, maybe third, maybe even fourth fiddle to some other guys that have been in front of him because they've been older. And now it's Tronny's turn. It's his turn to be the guy. And I think if there's anybody that's not going to be fazed by that fact and like, hey, you're the dude we're trying to get out. It's not Bryce Rayner. It's not Duncan Marston. It's not, whoever else was behind him. It's you're the guy. And that's not going to scare Tronny. Like, he's going to relish that fact and go, okay, let's go. Bring it on. Throw me your best pitches because he's got such a good approach. He understands the strike zone. He works at bats. And if you make a mistake, he's going to make you pay. He is going to make you pay off the barrel. So I'm excited. He's going to be back in center field. I think, there was some talk of him moving to the infield dirt, and I've got to see him do it during the winter time. And if he does wind up on the infield dirt, it just makes him even more intriguing because that bat and that athleticism and what he does is so freaking good.
Well, we got a glimpse of him on the infield at the pro case last year. Man, that was, dude, that in and out little workout part that we did. Like, holy smokes. You got to see it again at the All-American game. It's like, when I had kids from other states be like, oh, like what school does this guy play? I'm like, hey, he's an outfielder at Harvard Westlake. Have you ever heard of it? Wait, that guy's an outfielder? I'm like, yeah, he's an outfielder. Like, oh, wow. Like it was pretty impressive. So, that was pretty funny part about that. But Matt, let's go back down to San Diego. A lefty pitcher transferred to Cathedral. We mentioned him a little bit earlier, Jose Partida. I know you saw him several times last year when he was at La Jolla Country Day, but this is a guy that has grown a little bit. He's added some strength, and all indications are that he is going to have a monster year for the Dons.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's one of the guys last year playing for a smaller school. He got to get his experience in as a freshman, facing down some of the best lineups in San Diego. And he brought some good stuff, usually 85, 86 to 89. And I mean, all indicators show that's going to be taken up, especially with this 30-day sit-out period. He's just going to be in the bullpen getting hot for when he comes in, takes over the 2 or 3 spot in the Cathedral rotation. So he'll be pitching a lot. And then also the swing is just a sweet swing. And he has the athleticism to play outfield, but that swing will definitely make an impact. Saw him go deep just the other week. And smooth and clean through the zone and barreled the ball. So, I mean, yeah, and I think there's even more room to add in terms of adding weight. So, I mean, it's just, you can dream on what he's going to do for the next 3 years at Cathedral.
Yeah, when you sent me that video of him swinging, I was impressed. A, I didn't know that he hit, and B, like that was a legitimate swing. I mean, that is a really good swing, and then that ball just flew out of the yard. I'm like, oh, okay, like here we go. Like the Dons got themselves a good transfer there in Partida. And Hank, let's go back to the Central Valley, Clovis North, 2027. David Wilson. Davis Wilson. Davis Wilson. They're at Clovis North playing for Coach Prieto. a guy that you know pretty well there in the Clovis area. Tell us a little bit about Wilson, who you think is going to have a breakout year for Clovis North.
Yeah, Wilson is a 3-sport athlete a lot of guys in that Fresno area play multi-sports, but he was the only underclassman this past summer to make the area code team for the A's up here. So that speaks some volume for him. He's a sophomore that was up to 92 last year at the codes, I think. So, he's nothing crazy. He's about 6'1", 6'2", kind of that lengthy type guy, but nothing where you look at him, it's going to be like, oh, wow, this guy throws 100, right? So the scary part is I think when he sticks to baseball, he's going to get even better. Yeah. It's like, because he's going to play football and, basketball or soccer or whatever for the next 2 years. And I think once he makes that commitment to like, look, I'm going to become a pitcher and a hitter, like, that kid's going to be legit. Not that he already isn't, but it's not easy competing with those teams out there in Fresno either. So I think his numbers speak last year. So this year he can only go up.
Yeah, and just for reference, when it comes to future games, rostering Clovis is SoCal.
No, Bakersfield is SoCal.
No. The next guy's going SoCal too.
Yeah, that's Team SoCal, bro.
Up is what I get.
Yeah. You got the
Bay Area.
Elk Grove up, dude. Elk Grove up.
No, all of a sudden, guys.
Yeah,
all right.
All of a sudden. Speaking of sophomores who in future games, Hardy, another guy in that Central Valley area out of Garces Memorial, Gavin Williams is a guy I know you're really high on.
Big time. I mean, simply put, it's a freak athlete. Like, it's 6'4", 190 pounds. He's a switch hitting catcher who can play the left side of the infield, who can get on the mound and throw it upper 80s. Oh, and for good measure, he also plays quarterback and he plays wide receiver for Garces Memorial. There's a great shot that I found on social media where he's like Randy Mossing this kid in a 7-on-7 game. And I'm pretty sure like his belly button is at the kid's head and he's one-handing the ball just up here, just stuck in the air. And it's like, holy moly. He came out this Central Cal preseason All-State and just put on an absolute display during the workout. He ran a 7.2 for a 6'4", 190-pound sophomore. He was throwing BBs to second base. He jumped out at shortstop, looked really good. He was upper 90s from both sides of the plate as a switch hitter. He was launching balls to the deepest part of Antelope Valley. And then afterwards, I was kind of talking to him, thanking him for coming out, kind of letting him know, like, here's the next steps. We're excited to see you. And he kind of was like wobbling a little bit. I was like, dude, are you okay? Like, you tired? He's like, nah, I sprained my ankle yesterday. I'm like, wait, what? He's like, oh yeah, I rolled my ankle yesterday. I was, doing some stuff and I kind of rolled it. So he's like, I'm probably going at like 85% today. And it was like, oh, so you mean you're like, he's going to be
a bigger freak athlete than what you showed us? Yeah.
I was like, how do I even say this? He, like McCoy Sillis, like, he's a big part of why I got to get out into Bakersfield because I want to see him. You could see the rawness of he hadn't done a lot of baseball when he came out there at that time. Most of his hard contact was foul, but when that timing gets back, I am excited to see what he can do. He played full-time on varsity as a freshman. He's like Hank said, whenever he decides that baseball, and I had this talk with him, I'm like, oh, you gonna play football again? He's like, yeah, I know my future's probably on the baseball diamond, but I'm gonna do it for as long as I can. And it's like, whenever he decides that baseball is his sole focus, how good that kid is, the ceiling is higher than I can probably imagine.
Team SoCal, baby.
Yeah, that's Team SoCal.
Team Central Cal.
Yeah, Team Central Cal. Right. All right, let's close this out with some freshmen here to talk about. And Matt, we'll start with you. Daxton Hyde out of Mission Hills High School, a 28-28 shortstop. I know he's got you pretty excited about his future potential.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I haven't seen Daxton play in person, but I mean, I had a scout tell me about him. I had, he's on our list of 28s and doing a little bit of digging. He's a two-sport athlete playing basketball as well. Already 6'3", 185, but there's strength in the frame. Did a little more digging. His brother's 6'11", who's playing D1 basketball right now.
Oh.
So who knows if he'll be sticking at short. But I mean, everything looks great. He's contributing points on varsity basketball. The swing looks good, looking good on the mound up to around 85, 86 in January. So, I mean, everything here indicates, freak athlete, can do anything that anything on the baseball field. So super intriguing player who's definitely going to get meaningful playing time on the mound and in the lineup for Mission Hills this year.
Nice. And Hank, the freshman for you, a guy we know pretty well, one really well, Chase Cotton there out of Whitney High School, guy we have pretty highly ranked in that 2028 class. Tell us a little bit more about Chase.
Yeah, Chase, number one player in Cali for 28 class. I think he's like top 10 in this country. He'll play third. He'll be the starting third baseman for Whitney when he's not pitching, because Whitney's got Corden Petty and Brady Estes, who are their two senior arms, both going to Cal Poly. But I've watched in the past, Cotton's been up to 94 in the fall, or in the summer, as a 28 is ridiculous, right? But I saw him throw last weekend, and he was, right where he's supposed to be, I think, the 88, 90 range. But the off speeds were swing and miss, and it was in the zone. I mean, I think the biggest thing with him is what he's going to provide on the mound this year. The hitting's going to be what it is. It's varsity hitting. It's hard to hit after facing 14-year-olds, the past summer, but he's just one of the better kids in the state, I think, and he's got a shot to have a real career on the mound.
Yeah, and then Hardy, we'll close out the 28s with you with another talented, highly ranked freshman in Theo Swafford out of Sierra Canyon. I know it's a left-handed bat that you've been singing the praises of since you first saw early in the fall.
Yeah, I had a hard time with this one because there was another kid pretty close to me. I'll talk about a little bit later where I had to pick, but I went with Theo because, one, it's left-handed. If you hit left-handed, you get the auto bump for me. Like, it almost always wins out. And more so, I got a chance to see him take ground balls and play defense at short. And I know when we were doing our rankings, the discussion with him was, where's he going to play? I was like, well, I think he's got a chance to play shortstop, and I think he's going to wind up playing more outfield as a freshman. And then I watched him take the ground balls there, and it was like, oh my goodness, when he cleans that arm up and he just gets he's got these giant feet for a 5'10" kid. When he grows into those little dog puppy feet that he has there, he's going to be really good at shortstop, and then top it off with and I hate saying advanced. I know people always go, why is he advanced? But it's advanced for a freshman. Like, his understanding of the strike zone, his ability to barrel the baseball, his willingness to take a walk. He's going to hit towards the middle of that order. Eventually, he's going to move up into the top 3 spots, I would assume, within the next year or two. And just, dad played minor league baseball, dad played Division I football. Like, there's just so many up arrow marks with him. And then the biggest one, he's going to do it in the Mission League. Like, we talk about all these good leagues, like, he's going to do it in the Mission League. Like, he's going to get significant playing time as a freshman in the Mission League. I'm excited to see what he can do facing that type of pitching all season long.
Yeah, really, really quickly, we're going to just kind of gloss through these leagues that we think are going to be some of the better leagues throughout the state, some of them that have some intriguing storylines within themselves that we'll probably cover, in a future podcast. Obviously the track there in Fresno, the East Bay League, the Sierra Foothill League, the Marmani League, the Channel League, the Foothill League. I think the Trinity League you can add into that.
Yeah.
I think you can add the Mission League certainly into that. I think the Big 8 League with Corona and Norco and all those guys, you can add into that. The Southwestern League with Great Oak and Vista Marietta, and all those great teams down there. The leagues down in San Diego, Matt, with Saints and Cathedral, should be another really good league. But all in all, I think it's just going to be just an awesome season of high school baseball that I'm excited to. Can't wait for it to get going, in full board here with the state. So, guys, anything else to add? Anything you might have missed or that we might have missed? We've gone a little long here, so hopefully people are still tuning in. But anything you guys want to add here before we wrap up?
Bring it on. Bring it on. I mean, let's keep the rain away. Let's get the sunshine going, and let's make it another great season. Yeah,
absolutely, guys. So thanks a bunch for doing this and taking some time. And, be sure to check us out, prepbaseballreport.com. Follow us on social media. You see those handles down below. Everything is at prepbaseballca. And so appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time at the yard.